Alright, so this story is about ethylene glycol. I was hoping I'd get a little more applause for ethylene glycol than that. So, I'm one of those environmental advocates. Here's a cheap way to get applause. I'm one of those organizers that Obama talks about. Yeah, right. Wow, cheap applause. Where are you guys? Fine. So I'm an environmental organizer, right? And one of the stories that environmental organizers know is we are always seeing these cases where things get really, really bad, and the opposition that's making lots of money off the things that we say are bad tell us that we don't have any proof for what's going on. So just today, I'm at this gathering that this center had pulled together in Ursinus College, and this guy from Penn State is up there, and he's talking about all the misinformation around a big issue that's hitting our state right now, which is natural gas drilling. And if you know what natural gas drilling is, it's going all over our state. We're not making any money off of it. It's like a big Exxon Valdez spread all over the state. The only difference is in the Exxon Valdez, there's only $10 million worth of oil in the Exxon Valdez. And in our state, there's like $50 billion of this gas. So people really want to go after it, and they want to make a lot of money. They're going to wreck the state while they're doing it. And they've done it in lots of other parts of the country, and people have gotten really sick. Most notably a bunch of cows. So about this time last year, in a cow farm in Louisiana, 17 beef cattle that are like 900 pounds died so horribly that people could hear them screaming from like a half mile away. And when they found them, blood was pouring out of their mouth. Okay, foul, right? So this Penn State professor standing up there, and he's like, there's a lot of misinformation about the toxicity of natural gas drilling and the hydrofracking fluids that are used, blah, blah, blah. And so I raised my hand, and I was just like, you know, what's the misinformation? Like, fucking cows died, you know? Like, I weigh 200 pounds, and these 900-pound cows drank some of this fluid that you're jamming into the ground all over the state, that our watershed's being exposed to. It's going to wash down the streams to us here in Philadelphia, and like 900-pound cows died. That's, to me, that's toxic. He's like, we need to understand the meaning of the word toxic. I'm like, blood pouring out of a cow's mouth, toxic. So this know-it-all guy from Chesapeake Energy, which is one of the big natural gas developers in the state, is sitting right next to me. He says, it wasn't hydrofracking fluid that you talk about that was actually the cause there. It was ethylene glycol from a process that Schlumberger, our contractor, was using. It wasn't the hydrofracking fluid, because what they do is they load water up with these chemicals. It's only like 0.5% that goes into the water, but it's really nasty stuff. And the stories that have been heard about when the cows were killed is that it was this diluted substance. It was 99.5% water and 0.5% this other nasty stuff that killed the cows, but that 0.5% had a very powerful vote in the whole decision of what happened to the cow. So he says this to me, and I'm just like, I don't think that's true, but he basically calls me a liar in front of all these people, and I'm mad about it. So I don't like to be called a liar. But it turns out this guy is a big liar himself, because I go back to my office and I start looking into the story, and I'm like, ethylene glycol, what is that? And it turns out that ethylene glycol is basically antifreeze, and I don't know if you guys knew this, but it's kind of sweet. If a kid or an animal is exposed to ethylene glycol, they'll eat it because it looks good and it smells good and actually tastes really good. It's just that it makes blood pour out of your mouth and you die horribly, which is bad. So the stories that had been told about it, and there was a settlement that was printed up by the state of Louisiana that I read that said that Chesapeake Industry itself, had said that it was hydrofracking fluid that had spilled onto the ground. It had been escaped onto the pasture, but they still said that it wasn't their fault that the cows had died. Somehow the blood just poured out of the cows' mouths on their own. I guess that happens in Louisiana sometime. I've only been to Louisiana once, so I don't know. But when I looked more into it, the idea was that he was saying that Schlumberger was using ethylene glycol on site for some engine process, but it happened when it rained, and the rain made it wash off the site and into the field where the cows were, because this drilling pad was right next to this beef cattle farm. And so either they were just leaving the ethylene glycol out, the antifreeze, just sort of in open vats, or it washed out of these massive frac pits where they stick the hydrofracking fluid. And one of the things that I looked up online today and found out was that one of the things of that 0.5% that they stick in the water, one of those constituents, one little piece of it, is in fact ethylene glycol. And in fact, even Chesapeake had admitted that it was hydrofracking fluid that had drained off. So, But somehow this guy who worked for the company because he knew none of us had computers in front of him and could verify it there and wanted to score the points in front of this room full of people said, no, you're wrong, it was just ethylene glycol that our contractor is using. So I just thought about ethylene glycol all day, and I want to punch ethylene glycol in the face, and I thought you guys would want to hear about it too.